No one tells you this, but when a man releases inside you, it's not just sex. It's not just pleasure. It's a moment where his body is screaming something his mouth may never say. And if you think it's only physical release, you're missing the real story, the emotional wave that crashes into him at that exact moment. Because here's the truth. In that second, he feels raw, exposed, and deeply vulnerable. For some men, it's the first time they let down their guard, without even knowing it. It's his body trusting you enough to go all in. But here's the catch. What he feels in that moment can either bring you closer or show you exactly where he stands with you. When a man chooses to finish inside, it's rarely just about pleasure. There's often an instinct of intimacy, his way of saying, I'm connected to you, I trust you, I want to be close. At the same time, that closeness carries weight. Some men feel a rush of commitment they didn't even plan for. Others feel a moment of fear, because suddenly this is no longer casual. It means something. And I want you to stick with me here, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal the subtle ways you can tell if his release was just physical, or if it was actually his unspoken way of saying, you matter more than you realize. Let me ask you something honest. Not just something interesting, but something that could change the way you look at every private moment you've ever had. Have you ever looked into a man's eyes at the very second he lets go and truly wondered, what is he really feeling right then? Most people assume they know. They say it's pleasure, a climax, a high, the peak of it all. But that answer is like reading a song by counting the notes. It misses the meaning. What if I told you that moment isn't only about pleasure? That for him, it could be the most emotionally exposed second of his whole week, maybe even his life. This is the first shift, because we're not talking about biology here. We're talking about a break in his armor, a place where he stops being who the world told him to be and starts showing who he truly is. Men are taught from childhood to keep it all in. Strength means control. Control means silence, and silence becomes a way to survive. But in that brief instant during release, something powerful happens. The mask drops, the walls fall. He is unguarded, completely unarmed. It becomes a window, one he almost never opens, and you are standing right there on the other side. Now pause with me, because I want to take you deeper. Imagine this. You're lying together, the room quiet, your breathing slowing, and then you notice it. Not the act itself, but the after, the softness in his face, the way his hand rests near yours. That's not by accident. That's his nervous system saying, I feel safe. But here's the twist. Sometimes right after release, instead of pulling you close, he rolls away, distant, silent, almost cold, and you wonder, did I do something wrong? But what if I told you that moment isn't always about you? This is where it gets more interesting. Because what if that distance isn't rejection but fear? A man who isn't emotionally ready may feel unsafe when his guard falls. The exposure frightens him, so he withdraws, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know how to sit with what just came up. Vulnerability doesn't come with instructions. For some men, it feels like standing naked in a storm, not knowing if the next strike will hit. That's the emotional struggle we often miss. He has just shown you something deeper than most words ever could. Yet he may not even understand it himself. And here's the insight. If that moment is received by someone emotionally aware, someone who notices it and doesn't back away, it can shift everything. He might never say it aloud, but his mind begins to connect that safety with you, and that imprint is stronger than you imagine. Which brings us to a very human truth most people overlook. Men aren't only longing for release, they long for a place to release into. A place that feels less like a performance and more like a safe haven. That 1 second of surrender with the right man and the right woman can open the door to real devotion. But not every man knows how to step through it. And not every woman even sees that the door is there. So let me leave you with this. The next time you're in that quiet moment after intimacy, when the world fades and you're both floating in stillness, ask yourself, what is he truly feeling? Because the answer may be something you've never thought about, something that can either pull you closer or quietly create a space between you that you don't yet understand? What if I told you that the deepest desire most men carry, beneath all the goals, the drive, the achievements, isn't really about power or sex or status, but about something they rarely admit craving: the feeling of home. And I don't mean walls or furniture or memories of childhood. I mean a place inside, emotional, where they no longer need to perform. A space where they can just exist without being judged, measured, or expected to always be strong. For many men, that space doesn't exist in their daily world. Work demands results. Friends expect humor. Family expects duty. The world expects silence. But intimacy, when it's real, becomes the only place where he can finally breathe. And the moment he lets go inside you, that's when the breath is released at last. Because in that instant, something ancient takes over, whispering, "You're not alone anymore." I remember a friend once telling me, "I never knew what safety felt like until I saw her eyes looking at me after it was over." He wasn't describing the act. He was describing that grounding calm that can't be spoken. And the irony was, he didn't realize he needed it until he experienced it. Here's the second shift: biology meets emotion. During release, his body makes oxytocin, the same hormone mothers feel when holding their newborns. But unlike women, men aren't taught to recognize or trust that feeling. So instead of saying, "I feel close to you," he might just hold you tighter than usual, or stay silent, tracing his fingers over your skin like he's afraid the moment will vanish. That isn't confusion, it's his biology searching for meaning. And if he finds someone who can see through his defenses, someone who lets him land gently instead of crashing, he may start calling that space home, even if he never says the word. The moment of release becomes a mirror. If he feels safe with you, what reflects back is grounding. But if he feels uncertain, what he sees is exposure. That's why some men turn distant afterward. Not because they don't care, but because they weren't ready to be seen. Now let's go deeper, into the place where logic no longer matters. What happens after the climax? For some men, it's a turning point. Not because the physical part was incredible, but because the emotional mark it leaves stays. The way you touched his back, whether you stayed close or pulled away, even the silence. Was it warm or was it cold? All of it becomes part of his memory, data stored in his nervous system. And here's where the loop of curiosity opens again. What if every intimate experience isn't just remembered but recorded? What if the way you treat him right after becomes the blueprint for how he views you forever after? Does he feel like a man who matters, or like just another moment you moved through? That's the emotional weight so many women don't see, because they underestimate the power they hold in that sacred space. When his body has collapsed but his heart is still listening, most men won't ask you to stay. They won't say, "Hold me." They won't admit that this is the most peace they've felt in days. But if you stay, if you answer his silent need with warmth instead of distance, you become unforgettable. And the emotional release becomes just as powerful as the physical one. If he starts to connect that safety with you, everything shifts. I want you to picture this. His body still, the room dark, time pausing for just a moment. You move your fingers gently along his arm, not as a habit, but as a signal. "I see you. I accept this version of you." And without speaking, his breathing changes, because for the first time all day, he isn't preparing or anticipating, he's simply being. And that feeling, that presence, might be the first time he calls something home without even realizing it. But not all men can stay in that space. Some feel it, then escape from it, because safety is so rare it feels almost foreign. They pull back, not because they don't want you, but because the wanting itself scares them. And that's where the next part of the story begins. There's something few people explain about men and intimacy. Most men don't know how to put it into words, and most women don't know where to look for it. But it's there. After the moment of release, when the storm quiets and his breath slows, a wave comes. Not just of calm or relief, but of emotion so raw it can even surprise him. Sometimes it feels like tenderness. Sometimes it feels like deep thankfulness. And sometimes it feels like love. Not the loud, dramatic kind spoken in big gestures, but the quiet, unexpected love that slips in when his walls are down. The kind that takes him by surprise because he didn't plan it, didn't chase it, didn't even see it coming. Yet now it's here, and he doesn't know how to handle it. This is the first emotional shift. He feels something greater than the moment itself, but he doesn't have the language to hold it. You may notice it in his silence, in the way his eyes linger on you, or in the way his hand stays still against you rather than moving away. That pause isn't boredom. That pause is his body catching up to his heart. During release, oxytocin rushes into his system. His emotional volume, normally quiet, suddenly turns up, and what he hears inside might overwhelm him. I feel something here. I didn't expect this. Why do I want her closer right now? And the strange beauty is, he might not even realize it's happening. He just knows that something about you feels different, feels right. I once thought emotional connection was built only through long talks, and yes, sometimes it is, but more often, it's born in the silence, in the way someone holds you afterward, in the way they stay when it would be easier to step back. That's where trust grows roots. That's where real feelings begin, not because of words, but because of what is allowed. And here curiosity grows again. Does he even know he's falling? Or is it just a feeling he longs to return to, without understanding why? That's the secret about this moment. It bypasses logic. It bypasses pride. It speaks straight to his nervous system, to the younger version of himself who was told to hide his softness. And when you answer that moment with your presence, your stillness, your attention, you give him something far more powerful than pleasure. You give him space to feel. And that space, that safety, might be the first time in a long time he remembers what affection without demand feels like. No performance, no scoreboard, just presence. And here comes the second emotional turn, from affection to longing. Because once a man feels that kind of safety, that warmth, that bond, he doesn't just enjoy it, he starts to crave it again. Not because the physical part was amazing, but because for once, he was allowed to just be. It's addictive, not in a needy way, but in a deeply human way, in an I didn't know this was possible until now way. Imagine this. He holds you tighter, not because he fears losing you, but because part of him just realized he doesn't want to return to the version of himself that existed before you. The version that didn't know this feeling, didn't trust this softness, didn't believe it could exist between two people. And even if he never says it aloud, he's thinking, what if I could keep this? What if this is how it's supposed to feel? That's the emotional release after the physical one. The part he won't write in a text, won't mention in conversation, but it stays in his body, it stays in his memory, and the next time he sees you, it's there. Quiet, unspoken, but drawing him closer. Yet not all men respond to that pull in the same way. Some welcome it and let it cover them. Others fight it because it feels too raw, too open, too vulnerable, and when you've spent a lifetime building walls, sometimes your first reaction when they fall is to run. So what happens when the man in your arms isn't ready for what he just felt? That's the question we need to explore. Because not every heart meets love with openness. Some meet it with fear. Right after intimacy, there's a moment no one talks about. A small shift that doesn't scream for attention, but changes everything. His breathing, his movements, the way he looks at you. It's not lust, it's not relief. It's something primal, something ancient. In that instant, after release, when silence fills the room, a man's instinct stirs and it whispers something simple yet powerful. Protect her. He won't say it, he might not even notice it. But if you look closely, you'll see it. The way his body tilts slightly towards you, the way his arm instinctively pulls you in, or the way his silence feels full, not empty. That's not routine. That's his nervous system wrapping around a truth he didn't expect. You matter. This is the first emotional acceleration. Because for men, protectiveness isn't just an action. It's a language, a way of saying you're important without needing to explain it. And it often shows up strongest right after he has exposed the most hidden part of himself. That moment of vulnerability, of surrender, sparks something in him. It creates a pull, a need not just to keep you close, but to make sure you're safe, to make sure you know you're not just passing time together. I used to think protectiveness was about power, but now I see it's often born from softness, from the terrifying truth that he let someone in and now that someone feels like part of him. And here comes the second turn, the fear. Because with protectiveness comes risk. He's no longer thinking only about the moment. He's thinking about what follows. Will you stay? Will you understand what it meant for him? Will you notice the change even if he doesn't put it into words? And if you don't, if you pull away, shift the subject, brush it off, he might tell himself, I went too far. Not too far in action, but too far in emotion. That's why many men retreat, why they grow cold when just moments ago the night felt warm. Because vulnerability without response doesn't only hurt, it leaves scars. And next time, he'll hesitate to open that door again. But if you meet that moment with awareness, if you lean in rather than step back, you unlock something rare. Not just his affection, but his devotion. And here's what makes this moment so powerful. It's not always grand or dramatic. Sometimes it's just him sending a message the next morning to check on you. Sometimes it's the way he places your coffee on the table differently the next day. Sometimes it's a quiet look that stays longer than it needs to. These aren't random habits, they're his way of saying, I notice you, I care about you, and most of all, you're under my skin. This is the emotional release, inside the emotional release. The layer most people never notice, and it's deeply human, because at the core men ache to protect what they value, not because they think you're weak, but because protecting is how they express love. It's how they stay close when words feel too small. And if you brush off those gestures as small or trivial, you miss the real message. He isn't only trying to be sweet, he's trying to belong. And this leads to a truth I had to learn the hard way. Men often show their deepest feelings not in what they say, but in what they do afterward. If he stays, if he holds you, if he quietly watches over you, he's revealing the one thing he doesn't know how to admit. That being with you didn't just feel good, it felt right. And here comes the third shift, from protectiveness to imprint. When a man links safety, gentleness, and deep emotion with one person, that memory carves itself into him. It becomes a place his body remembers, a point of return, a silent tether. It becomes a reference he may not even realize he's carrying into every future connection. And that raises a powerful question. If his body remembers, even when his mind tries to forget, how does that shape the way he loves? For some men, intimacy is just another passing experience, but for others it becomes a turning point, one that redefines what connection means. And when that happens, when he no longer sees sex as escape but as return, it changes him in ways he may never be able to explain. So let's bring this all together. When a man releases inside you, yes, it's physical. It's body, tension, sensation. But if that's all you see, you've missed the most meaningful part. Because in that single instant, something far greater unfolds. His body may be letting go, but what's really happening is an opening. A rare, uncovered moment where he isn't performing, isn't guarding, isn't proving, he's simply existing. And in that stillness, in that breath after, his soul whispers one word, stay. What he feels in that pause, vulnerability, closeness, trust, protectiveness, none of it is random, none of it is imagined. It's his nervous system, his memory, his instinct and his emotions all colliding into one truth. This means something. And here's the deeper layer. Most men will never speak this out loud. Not because they don't want to, but because no one ever taught them how. Instead, you'll notice it in his quiet, in the way he moves toward you, in his hesitation to let the moment pass, in the way he remembers you long after other details fade. I once believed love was only about shared values, shared plans, shared goals. And yes, those are important. But now I see love often begins in the body, not just in desire, but in that sudden, unexplainable safety that tells a man, you can rest here. And rest is not a small thing for men. In a world that demands action, pressure, performance, rest isn't just comfort, it's trust. And when he feels that trust with you, even once, it plants a seed. A question he can't silence. Could I stay here? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Could I return to this space, not because I need release, but because I crave connection? That's the final resolution. When intimacy grows beyond pleasure, it becomes belonging, a space where he doesn't only give but also finds, a place where the masks drop, the walls crumble, and what's left isn't a role but a man, raw, present, reaching. And if you're there in that moment, fully seeing him without needing to fix, impress, or define, you don't just become unforgettable, you become home. And that word, home, is what every man searches for, even if he doesn't know it. So here's what I want to leave you with. The next time you're with someone, not just in the act, but in the moments after, pay attention. Watch softly. Ask yourself not, what did he do, but what did he feel? Because the answer to that holds everything. His truth, his bond, his future. And maybe yours too. Have you ever felt that shift? That moment when everything went quiet but somehow carried more weight than words ever could? I'd love to hear your experience. Share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else might need your story more than you realize. And if this opens something inside you, pass it on to someone who deserves to understand what really happens in the silence after. Because when we begin to see intimacy not only as touch but as truth, that's when connection stops being temporary and starts becoming unforgettable. Because intimacy is not only about two bodies meeting, it's about two souls opening a door. What happens in those quiet moments is often louder than any words. When he chooses to stay close after, when he doesn't rush to move away, he's showing you his heart in the simplest way he knows. And that is where the truth of connection lives. It's not in big promises or carefully written messages. It's in the silence, in the way he lets his guard down, in the way he allows you to see the part of him he hides from everyone else. And when you notice this, when you don't overlook those little things, you realize intimacy is a language without words. A touch, a pause, the way his breathing slows next to you. These become the real confessions. These are the signs he may never be able to explain with his mouth, but his body tells you again and again. That is why paying attention is so important, because sometimes the smallest gesture carries the biggest meaning. For many men, saying I love you feels heavy, almost too much. But showing it? That comes in the way he holds you longer, or the way he makes space for you in his world without even thinking about it. That's the kind of love that doesn't need to be announced because it's already lived. And if you've ever felt that, you know it's unforgettable. Here's what makes this even more powerful. When a man links intimacy to safety and connection, he begins to return to it not just for the pleasure, but for the peace. That is when you stop being just a person in his life, you become his safe place. And safe places are rare. Men don't stumble upon them every day. They hold on to them once found, even if they can't put into words why. And maybe that's why so many people miss the depth of what's really happening. They think intimacy is only about passion, about attraction, about the heat of the moment. But what truly lasts is what happens after. The calm, the softness, the wordless promise. That's what keeps echoing inside him long after the moment is gone. That's what he remembers when life gets hard, when stress takes over, when the world feels too heavy. He remembers the feeling of home, the feeling of being allowed to just be. So the next time you find yourself in that silence, don't rush it. Don't treat it as nothing. That quiet is the proof That quiet is his way of saying more than any speech could. And if you can lean into it, if you can hold that space without needing to fill it, you'll see the truth written all over him.